Hello, and welcome back to my video series on how to use Google SketchUp. In today's lesson, we'll learn more about how to use the line tool, learn how to undo and redo actions, and learn how to draw lines on 2D sketches.
So picking up where we last left off, let's go ahead and just create a new project so it's a little bit easier to work with. So we'll go back up to over here. We'll go over here and say new. This will basically create a new project for us. So let's just start over. Just a clean workspace to work with. And let's call this project, just call it sketch number 1. And hit OK. So since we already have the selection tool, this black arrow, we'll go ahead and select the person and then hit delete. And then let's change our model info as well. So we'll go to the far right panel of tools right there and select that. And then let's change it to 0.0 millimeters and then the precision put at 0.00. Once that's done, you can go ahead and hit the X button up here, and then we're all finished for setting this up. So let's go ahead and also change our standard projection views. So we go over here, and again, let's look from the top down since that's the easiest to kind of work with for right now. And then from here, we'll go ahead and select the line tool, which is found over in the left-hand column. So now that we have our pencil back, what we're going to do is go to the origin right here, and then we're going to make a square. Let's say 50 by 50 millimeters. So we'll go ahead and go to the origin, select it, and then kind of just drag our mouse out. And because we're on the origin and it's a line that's parallel to the red axis right here, it's going to look like we're not drawing anything, but there actually is something there, but it's just on top of the red line. It's a red line on top of a red line, so it's invisible. But what we're going to do is type in the number 50 and then hit enter. So it might look like nothing's there, but if we look closely, we can see, first of all, our pencil is still attached to the point that we made. But if you also look carefully in the center right here, you can see there's like a little endpoint that's been created right there. So for simplicity, let's go ahead and hit escape, which kind of allows us to move around freely without a line being attached to it. And then let's zoom into the center. So we can zoom in. And you can see as we started zooming in that blue line started appearing again. We can just ignore it for right now. But now you can see that endpoint right here. We can see that this endpoint right here to the origin, which is that point over there, is going to be 50 millimeters. So now what we can do is, since these two endpoints are created, it allows us to kind of just automatically snap our pencil to it so that it makes things a lot easier to kind of work with. So we select over here, again with the pencil tool, and then we can just draw up. And in the same way as before, we can see now that there's a green line that comes off of it, and it just means it's parallel to the green axis over there. If we move away, we can see that green line disappears. But let's keep it on the parallel to the green axis just so it makes everything square for us. And what we're going to do again is type the number 50. So you can see the number changes in the bottom right hand corner, and then we can hit enter, and it'll make it 50 millimeters for us. We repeat the process again, go to the endpoint, we're already connected to it, and just draw a line to the left now. And it should be a red line, meaning again it's parallel to the x-axis or the red axis. We type in the number 50, and we hit enter, and we can see that it creates a line that connects again, that's parallel to the red axis, that's 50 millimeters long. And then to finish it up, we can just draw a straight line all the way down. And because everything else is 15 millimeters, it'll make it, by default, once we hit that little point in the center at the origin, it'll make it 50 millimeters as well. Or you can type the number 50 and it'll automatically do it for us. And then again, because we made a closed shape, it changes it now to a filled surface color, this light gray color. So when you're working with the tools in here, let's say we made a mistake and we want to undo. There's two ways to kind of undo actions in here. The first is just like any computer, you can hit Control and Z, and what that will do, it will undo your most previous action. Or if you want to, there's also a little on the far left-hand corner, bottom left-hand corner, there's an undo button, which allows us to undo further actions, or it allows you to just undo things. Likewise, if you want to redo something that you undid, It's a little bit confusing, but to just basically undo the undo, you can hit this one that says redo. and it'll redo the actions for you. And likewise, the keyboard is Control and Y that will redo those actions for you. So Control and Z undoes, and then Control and Y redoes. It's a little bit weird to say that. Okay, so now that we have this square right here, if we move to the very top right here, we can see that it basically creates, if we go to the center right here, it creates a blue circle right here. This is the midpoint. So this midpoint is basically the midpoint of the top line right here. So that means it's 25 millimeters to the left and 25 millimeters to the right. We can select it, and then we can just draw a line that goes straight down, and as long as we don't move our cursor too far to the left or too far to the right, and we keep it a green color, it'll be parallel to the green axis, and then we can find a point down here also on the midpoint, and it'll create a line once we hit the button right there. So this creates basically two halves of the square right here. One side is 50 millimeters by 25 millimeters, and then the same thing for the other side, 50 millimeters by 25 millimeters. We can do the same thing also going horizontally. We can find the midpoint along the far left line and kind of just go across. And then what we can see now, it creates a midpoint to that line that was already there that we just created. So we can select it right there. So now it creates a midpoint at 25 millimeters going from left to right. And then we can kind of just pick that up again and create another one that goes to the midpoint over here. So basically these two lines have created basically four 25 by 25 millimeter squares on top of the surface of this 50 by 50 millimeter square. And you can keep doing that further. You can keep segmenting things smaller into smaller quarters by finding the midpoint between the lines. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're forced to always do things in the midpoint. You can arbitrarily put a midpoint onto any line right here, or at any point on the line. So let's say I want to put a line right here. You can just kind of find it and then just draw it and then put it, unsnap it to the other line. If you want to be more accurate on where you want to put the lines, so let's say I wanted to create let's say this 25 by 25 millimeter square, we wanted to break it up into 5 millimeter slices, so they would be 25 millimeters by 5 millimeters. What we can do is select this corner right here, tap it with the mouse, and then we can just drag it up a little bit. It actually doesn't matter how much you drag it up. You can, let's say, drag it all the way up over here. And you can see in the bottom right hand corner, as I move it up and down, you can see the value changes. You can just type the number 5 and then hit enter, and then it'll just automatically snap it for you, even if you go past that value. So if you look carefully, if we go back to the endpoint, and let's zoom in so it's a little bit more clear. If you move the mouse up along here, you'll find it basically created a point that is 5 millimeters up for us. So it's right there, that endpoint right there, 5 millimeters up. And then if we zoom out, we can just draw another line that goes all the way across like that. So again, we can go here, and then we can just type in the number 5, hit enter, click over here, snaps there, and it'll snap over on the other side, and that makes another 5 millimeter slice for us. You go back to that endpoint from the previous 5 millimeters, you just drag it up, and as you do it more, the program's smart enough to kind of understand that you're kind of doing something where you're slicing it up in regular amounts. So it'll kind of just snap for 5 millimeters for us, and then we can just keep on repeating that process. So just be careful, since there's a midpoint to this line right here from another line that we created earlier, it might want to snap up to it, but you can see if we do that, it makes the line no longer parallel. That line turned black when we were moving it, and you can obviously visually see that it's no longer parallel. So we can hit Control and Z to undo. Find that marking that's 5 millimeters, and then snap it over there. Go back over here, type in the number 5 again, or move it up and then type the number 5, hit enter, and then just move it across and then snap it right in there. So now each one of these rectangles right here is 25 millimeters by 5 millimeters. And that kind of gives us the ability to put arbitrary points onto a surface, or a line really, and it allows us to put markings of specific values so that we can separate things in specific ways. The next lesson we'll go a little bit further on basically now creating 3D objects from these 2D surfaces.